Welcome to episode 8 of Book Read. In a minute, you are going to meet crime, action, paranormal author Martin Tracey. He's absolutely wonderful, as are his books. So I suggest that after watching this show, you check out and follow him on all of his social media platforms and go and buy his book from his website or from Amazon. You're going to love this. The books are so twisty and so entertaining. They're amazing. So I think without further ado, let's go and meet today's author, the amazing Martin Tracey. Wow, Martin Tracey, the man I have heard about from many other authors and publishers. How are you, young man?
I'm good, thank you very much, Jaden, and thanks for the young man. I don't get called that very often these days.
Both, mate, you and me both. But thank you for agreeing to do episode 8 of the book read. I'm very excited. Before we go and hear about your book, Double Fantasy, can you tell us a little bit about you and how you decided you wanted to become an author?
Yeah, it's a bit of a funny story because I kind of knew I was okay with words as early as like 6 years old, which is going back a bit. So that was the 1970s. But what it was, I'd done 2 story competitions for my primary school, and that's a little school in England for anyone listening across America, and I won them, which is really good. But music was my first love, and obviously listening to it growing up to my dad's Elvis collection, that kind of thing, discovered the Beatles on my own, started to play the piano then, and then I joined bands, and so my sort of writing really came out in the form of songwriting. Done okay, didn't like hit any dizzy heights, we done okay, you know, we sailed close, got a couple of interviews in record companies and Battle of the Bands, and we did get one record contract that signed, but you know, ultimately it came to a point where the writing songs, which I still loved, but it's always that thing nagging. I was an avid reader anyway, you know. I really loved Enid Blyton books as a kid because I think that's what really fed my imagination as a kid.
The Faraway is my favourite.
Yeah, then as I got older, the Stephen Kings, Richard Laymans, I loved all that horror scene and that. But then Dan Brown, which I know he's got his knockers, but I actually thought what he'd done with Angels and Demons and that faction, where you mix fact and fiction, that kind of really inspired me. And like I said, I always had this thing in me, there's a book in us, we've all got a book in us, so I thought I'd write one. But as it turned out, I never stopped, and kind of the music, kind of as I got older, gave way to the books. So that's it now. I'm on my like 7th, 8th novel, trying to do them simultaneously, which is a bit ambitious. But then I'm doing biographies as well and some non-fiction musical stuff. As I said, music was my first love. It's quite nice that I've been able to carry that through into my world of writing.
Or is that kind of, I don't guess you probably don't have time to do the music if you're bloody writing that amount of books.
Not really. I mean, I had a Jack Russell, bless him, for years, and he sadly died, but he was such a character. He died last year. We had him for about almost 16 years. He had no eyes for like the last 6 years, but he didn't know. He was absolutely crazy. The reason I'm bringing that up is because when I started to play the piano, he'd howl along, which was quite amusing for everyone else, but for me, it wasn't very good in terms of...
you can't really get down and sing.
Yeah, I couldn't really, yeah. So the music really did, and you know, I suppose I got a little bit disillusioned with the whole music industry, really. So I did really just throw myself more into the books. It's something I could still be creative with, and obviously it's a bigger deal. You know, a song lasts 3 minutes, whereas a book... can reading it, well, who knows, but it can be days, can't it? You know, especially
days. But then it's that piece of beauty on a bookshelf. I the whole I don't have a Kindle because for me there is nothing like a real book. How a real book smells. How a real delving unit full of books looks like.
Yeah.
For me, that's just like, oh, when I grow up, I'm gonna have a bloody library, mate. I tell you, I was 6 in the 70s as well, so don't worry about that. And I still have
You look a lot better than me on it, Jaden. I have to say.
good filters, but no, I'm still waiting to grow up. So yeah, when I grow up, I'm gonna have my library. Your book's definitely gonna be in there, mate. Absolutely.
Cheers, thank you very much for that.
So when was this book, Double Fantasy? When was it released? I guess it's out now and available for everyone to get.
It's out now and available. So it's been just over 12 months. So the fiction. So this is the 4th Judd Stone novel. The Judd Stone series has proved quite popular, and it's quite good fun to write. So that's obviously in the fiction world. But what happened was, just as I thought I'd write books 5 and 6 in the Judd Stone series, I thought I'd do them simultaneously, which is a bit ambitious. But that proves how much I enjoy writing them as well.
Yeah, really.
The kind of biography stepped in. So I've done a biography on a guy called Robin George, who worked with Phil Lynott and Thin Lizzy. Robin is sadly no longer with us, as of course Phil isn't, but he'd worked with Robert Plant as well, all these different people, Roy Wood of The Move. And also I'm working on the Fuzzbox, who are an 80s all-female group. They always tell me the most successful all-female group to play their own instruments. So they kind of, there is some evidence actually, which is going in the biography, about how they inspired the Spice Girls and their names, you know, Sporty Spice, Wow. So I know I'm not really here to talk about them, but that's why
something to say about it.
Yeah, that's why there's been a time lapse from, you know, it's not a recent release, it's over 12 months, but it is my latest fiction novel, and it's the 4th in the Judd Stone series, Double Fantasy.
And can you tell us a little bit, obviously I'm looking forward to the biography about Jaden Cornelious, singer-songwriter, public speaker.
Yeah, of course, mate, you know
50 years time, when I actually I've got a few bloody stories, mate.
Well, that's what fills the biographies up.
But yeah, so tell us a little bit about the background of the books, the series, and the book that you did.
Yeah, so the first, it's funny how it worked, because the first book I wrote was meant to be a standalone, and going back to like Stephen King and some of his monster tome books, you know, like The Stand and that's what it was meant to be. The first book was Mind Gorilla, and it was about, most of my books are set in Birmingham, and of course, although this one is set in Liverpool, as you'll get to hear in a minute. And like me, with my very distinct accent, Judd Stone is a Brummie. So it's from Birmingham, UK. Although Birmingham, Alabama does feature Mind Gorilla, but long story short, no pun intended, Mind Gorilla was meant to be this big standalone sort of sprawling book. And Judd actually was a sidekick to a guy called William Chamberlain. So they're both in the a made-up Birmingham fictional police department. Yeah. They don't play by the rules, but they've got hearts of gold and get things done. You know, they'll get result by hook or by crook, usually by crook. But you know, the end kind of justifies the means. Yeah. And actually, Judd was an ex-football hooligan turned cop. So that was book 1, and that explored sort of serial killers and mind control, moving matter with your mind. The thing is, with William Chamberlain, who was meant to be the main protagonist, Detective Chief Inspector, he had multiple sclerosis, and I had this little idea of, well, as his sort of physical form and his disabilities became worse, his actual powers of telekinesis became stronger. So he was able to do more as his physical state went down. He's actually be able to do more with his mind. And Judd was meant to be this psychic. After the book, few reviews really like Judd Stone. I want to read more Judd Stone. It was meant to be the psychic to William Chamberlain. So that's how it was born, the series, really. Then in book 2, he explores the 27 Club. You know, all these pop stars die at the age of 27, so Club 27 is the name of that. And he becomes a bodyguard to a 26-year-old pop star who looks likely to be a 27 Club member. No spoilers. But in the same time in parallel, he wants to start exploring why this keeps happening, why this phenomenon happens, because it's as tragic as it is nevertheless something that happens time and time again. And is it really coincidence? It just seems a bit strange. So it explores that. So what I throw Judd into is kind of scenarios where he's really got to think and work out things that maybe are conspiracy theories or not conspiracy theories or real or whatever, and that's where the journey begins with Judd a lot. But he himself is a bit of an anti-hero. As I said before, you know, he'll do things by hook or by crook. He's got no qualms about killing people if he thinks it's the right thing to do. And then so in book 2, he's actually no longer a policeman because of how bad he is. And he becomes his bodyguard. But by books 3, 4, he obviously is a crime fighter. So he's moved into being a private detective because he can really play by his own rules then, you know. And book 3, Luna, that's about cracking an old case. So he uses past life regression. So there's always an element of supernatural in. He's a massive, massive Beatles fan, just like me. And that's where it's kind of the 4th title, which is the book I'm going to read to you, the final book in the series so far, Double Fantasy. There's a John Lennon's last album actually is called Double Fantasy, but it did actually fit the narrative of the book. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that. So it's the 4th in the series. By now he's a private detective, and the funny thing is, for book 4, he thinks he's earned a weekend off. He's got, you know, he's been busy, he's been cracking all these cases, and he gets a phone call out of the blue from an old mate called Rufus, who's a little bit of a bullshit. Is a bit like J8, the In-Betweeners. I don't know if you know that series. Yeah. So he quite does these heart of gold but tall stories, and he says, you know, I'm putting on a weekend in Liverpool. So that helps him think, oh well, it'll be good to have a boozy weekend in Liverpool. But there's a little bit of a catch, because it's an 80s tribute concert that Rufus is putting on at the Liverpool docks. And one act is Wham. So one half George Michael, the other half Andrew Ridgeley. Andrew Ridgeley, unfortunately, the Andrew Ridgeley character isn't available. So he's asked Judd, with his little bit of guitar playing, if he can stand in as the Andrew Ridgeley. And at the same time have a meet-up boozy weekend with the other mates who are Diego and Hunter. So it becomes this boozy weekend. However, things go a bit wrong because they get a run-in with gangsters and they have to flee to the countryside, and that's where that faction comes in, because it's kind of it's a story of two halves, which I really loved about Quentin Tarantino's From Dusk Till Dawn. Mm-hmm. You know, it's kind of a road movie and then it's a vampire movie, and my book isn't either of them. However, it's kind of a fun kind of gangster thing, and then it becomes witchcraft and occult once they flee to the countryside in Merseyside. And there's actually a real village, believe it or not, called Crank, and there are real legends connected to this village. One being that there's a prophetic white rabbit based on there used to be a lady lived in the village many centuries ago, was always, like traditionally in English villages, said to be the witch of the village, which she probably wasn't. However, long story short on that one, these two guys broke into the house and also killed the pet rabbit of the grandchild. That rabbit has since haunted them, caused them to kill themselves, and then also this rabbit appears now as a prophet of doom within the village. Wow. These are real legends. You can Google these are really there. The other one is there's Crank Caverns, these massive caverns that are right by the village of Crank. Very deep, very dark, very desolate, not used now. And legend as it there is that there was 3 boys got in, they went to the heart of the caverns, and there was these little people who had their own language and were actually cannibalistic. And one boy got away to tell the story. Soldiers went down to investigate. They did find human bones and everything. Wow. And then so so that these are kind of the legends I've weaved into that half of the story, as well as the Pendle Witches trials and all the things that are kind of folklore in the north of England, if you like.
Thank God I was born in London. We never had any caves like that.
Yeah. Yeah, so a lot for Judd to do in that book, but I won't spoil it. I won't say what happens, but yeah, it's kind of a game of double fantasy, a game of two halves, so to speak. And yeah, that's the premise of the book in the main, really.
I'm just going to ask, because in a minute I'm going to ask you to read a part of that book for avid viewers. But before, there's just one question I need to know. Did William get any other books, or are there any other plans? Is William always going to be on the sideline waiting to be called on, or is there a plan for William to get something?
Well, because of William and his illness, I can't, and his telekinesis, so he does continue into the book series. However, by book 4 he isn't around. However, it is not his illness that is his demise, so I won't spoil it. So if you read Club 27, or is it Luna? God, I can't keep up myself now. I think it's in Luna. If you read Luna, so yeah, it's definitely Luna. It's Luna, because in Club 27 they go to Vegas and have a double wedding and everything, which is fantastic. So Williams are in and around, and he's the mentor of Judd. You know, he's taught Judd.
So he gets called on
a lot. So he's still around, yeah. But by book 4, he's not.
Book 4. They need to get all 4, not just book 4.
All 4, yeah. And although they're a series, they can read standalone, even though like William's not around by book 4, but they do work as standalone stories. It's not like something, if you read double fantasy, you'd struggle to know what's happening if you went back or whatever, like, you know. So yeah, but yeah, William is around for a bit.
There's a few more book reads on the card as well then, mate, in the future.
Yeah, Judd Stone series will continue. I haven't got a number on how many Judd Stone books there'll be. I'll just keep writing until I feel like I want to, you know.
I can't wait for them to come out as movies, mate. They sound wicked.
That would be special.
That would be super cool. Right, well, Mister, would you like to read some of your book, Double Fantasy?
I would be happy to read some of it, yeah. Okay, hello, Double Fantasy by Martin Tracey, which is me, and chapter 1, I'm going to start from the beginning. I'm your man. Judd Stone answered his landline telephone after 3 rings. Hello, is that you, Stone? Who's this? It's your old mate, Rufus. Rufus Tash, blimey, it's been a while. How's things? Pretty good, thanks, mate. How are you? Fair to middling, I guess. That good, huh? Listen, Judd, I'll cut straight to the chase. I have a proposition for you, and you'll be doing your old pal a huge favour if you choose to accept. So you call me after all this time because you need something nice. Not entirely, but I am kind of desperate. Thanks, I think. So what is my mission should I wish to accept it? It's a bit of an unusual request. Well, you certainly have my attention, said Judd curiously. Have you ever wanted to be famous? Asked Rufus. Judd frowned. Not really. Okay, let me put it another way. I know that you've always liked your music, right? Yeah, I guess so. Judd wondered where all this was heading. The Beatles in particular, as I recall. Most definitely. They were undeniably a great band, and they were big in the 80s too. Don't you mean the 60s, Rufus? The Beatles were big in the 60s. How the Beatles are big in any decade. You know that more than anyone, Judd. Macca's Frog Chorus was in the 80s, right? Oh, and he did all that stuff with Michael Jackson back then as well. Yes, okay, point taken. Although I'm not convinced that the Frog Chorus is the best measure of the capability of the Beatles, but it has its place, I guess. Look, what's this all about, Rufus? I need you to be Andrew Ridgeley for the night. Judd took the phone from his ear and stared at it in puzzlement, wondering if his old friend had turned to drugs over their lost years. After a shake of the head, he returned to the conversation. What the hell are you talking about, Rufus? We've gone from the Beatles to Andrew Ridgeley in a millisecond, and you need me to be the latter for the night. He has had an accident, went skiing in Switzerland and broke his arm and both legs. Needless to say, he can't prance around the stage and play his guitar. Andrew Ridgeley of Wham? The very same. Kind of. Kind of? This isn't making a lot of sense, Rufus. Have you had a knock on the head, mate? No, of course I haven't. Okay, here's the deal. I'm putting on an 80s festival, and George Michael won't go on stage without Andrew Ridgeley. The same George Michael who died on Christmas Day 2016? No, of course not, and that's where the kind of reference comes in. I'm organising a festival of tribute artists. Wham, or rather Sham, as a tribute actor better known, are meant to be opening the whole thing. If we stick a black wig on you along with a Choose Life t-shirt, you really look the part and save the day, Judd. Are you nuts? I can play a little bit of guitar, just some basic chords and riffs, but I can't hold my own in a proper concert environment, Rufus. There's nothing to worry about. It's all totally okay. There will be a permanent band of core musicians that will play along with all the tribute acts to keep things ticking along nicely. I just need you to dance around looking handsome, Judd. I know you can do that. Like I said, George, or rather part-time builder Andrew Baker, is terrified to perform with Andy, or someone pretending to be him at least. And what's the name of the usual Ridgely impersonator, this guy who has hurt himself skiing? George Farmer. He's a chippy. That's how the two of them met and got into this. While working on construction projects together, they would sing along to the obligatory radio, and pretty soon Sham were born. So George is Andrew and Andrew is George. Yeah. And a baker is a builder and a farmer is a carpenter. Almost. George's surname is spelt with an L, not an R in the middle. And in their spare time, both the brickie and the chippy transform into two musical heartthrobs. Blimey, you couldn't write this stuff. Actually, it's more the other way around. They're construction workers in their spare time, as they do very well as the tribute act. That was until George Farmer had his skiing accident and we lost our Andrew Ridgely. I have to say that this is probably the most surreal conversation I've ever had, Rufus. So will you do it, Judd? Judd wasn't quite sure how to answer. There was a certain attractiveness to the proposition, but he'd never done anything like this before. It seemed a little scary. Why me? Because you are the coolest guy I've ever known, Judd Stone. I guess I should be flattered that you asked me, Rufus, and in spite of the proverb that flattery gets you everywhere, I really don't think so. Sorry, buddy, but it's not for me. Come on, Judd, you'll be rubbing shoulders with some of the biggest stars of the 80s, the likes of Boy George, Freddie Mercury, Jacko, Prince, Duran Duran, Bowie, Ferry, Bananarama. I know you fancied a couple of them back in the day. Oh, speaking of which, Kim Wilde too, and lots more I can't even think of right now. But Rufus, they are tribute acts, they are not the real people who sold thousands of hit records. You can distinguish between fancy and reality, can't you? Judd remembered how his old pal always had his head in the clouds and often suffered delusions of grandeur. Of course I can, you sarky bugger. Let me tell you though, these acts are just as good as the real thing, if not better. I wouldn't work with them otherwise, would I? Of course you wouldn't, Judd rolled his eyes. Rufus has always been a bit of a dreamer, which led him to exaggerate and be economical with the truth at times. In fact, although he was good, harmless fun, Judd had always considered his friend to be one hell of a prolific bullshitter. It seemed things hadn't changed over the years. Come on, buddy, as I said, you'd be doing me a massive favour. Oh, Elvis is playing too, he's a great showman. Elvis, he died in 1977, yes. But a version of Always on My Mind charted in 1985, as well as a couple of other releases, so he qualifies. It's not for me, Rufus, I'm sorry. Come on, Judd, I'm desperate. And twice you've told me that, Rufus, which doesn't exactly inspire me to help you now, does it? So once again, thanks, but no thanks. I didn't mean it like that. Besides, in truth, I thought that George Farmer's misfortune presented an ideal opportunity for us to be able to meet up again. It's been too long, buddy. I think he has done us a favour in a way. I'm not so sure that he would see it like that. Maybe not, but come on, Judd. You know meeting for a beer or two has long been overdue. Judd paused for a second, his resolve slightly beginning to wane. Well, I can't argue with that, but I'm just so busy right now. Look, Judd, even private investigators need a holiday. I've already called Diego and Hunter and they're both up for it. It'll be like old times, the four of us back together again. Besides, they said they wouldn't miss you prancing around the stage for all the Teen China, even though I hadn't actually agreed to anything yet. I assume that you would want to help an old pal out and catch up good and proper with your old buddies. Perhaps you're no longer the Judd Stone that we once knew and loved. So you're using guilt-tripping tactics on me now. Come on, Judd, it'll be a laugh. All you need to do is act like Andrew Ridgely for 20 minutes or so, and then once you're off stage, it'll be party time. The audience tends to keep their eyes on George anyhow. I mean, Andrew, the singer, you know what I mean. So there's no real pressure on your performance. Is there going to be a Beatles tribute act? No, I just spoke about them to get your attention. If I'm being honest, it's quite a tenuous link to the 80s really, wasn't it? Yes, it was, so I wouldn't even get to see a tribute act of my favourite band at a festival specifically designed for tribute artists. No, but I am holding a festival in Liverpool, which is the home of your beloved Beatles. You can't fail to have a good time in Liverpool now, can you? Imagine the post-concert booze up in the likes of the Cavern Club with your old pals. Come on, Judd. What do you say? The temptation was now simply too much for Judd. He loved the city of Liverpool almost as much as his home city of Birmingham, and it would be good to meet up with the boys again. Okay, I must be nuts, but I'll do it. Unbeknownst to Judd, Rufus punched the air. Good man, I'll see you at Lime Street Station at 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. You'll be on stage at 7. Cheers, buddy. The phone went dead. Rufus had finally heard the answer he wanted, and there was no turning back for Judd now. Actually, as daunting as the performance was going to be, Judd was already beginning to think what a great opportunity it would be for him to connect with his old friends. A reunion was certainly well overdue. It was true that his workload was busy, but he could ask Yasmin, his faithful, albeit contrary PA, to reschedule a couple of things for him. Yeah, it'd be fun to go to Liverpool. But then the smile the company had stretched across his face soon changed when he remembered he already had a commitment for the forthcoming weekend. Shit, he was meant to be having Billy, his daughter. With the phone still in his hand, Judd punched in the numbers that he knew off by heart and quickly made a bid to connect with his estranged wife, Brooke. After a series of rings, Brooke answered. Hello? Hi Brooke, it's me. Hey Judd. Hey look, I'm really sorry but something's come up for this weekend. You mean something that's more important than caring for your daughter? No, of course not. It's just bad timing and unfortunately it can't be rescheduled. I'll make it up to Billy. I'll happily have her for 2 weekends in a row or more even. No you won't. If you can't put her first, that's your tough luck. Every other weekend is your custody rights, you know that. Yet you can't even seem to manage that. Is what you're doing really so important? It's work, Brooke. He closed his eyes with shame as he lied, conscious that it wasn't the first time he had lied to her. But actually, when he thought about it, perhaps prancing about as one half of Wham could be considered as work of a sort, so perhaps it wasn't exactly a lie after all. I can't go into details, it's a very unusual client, but it's very important that I see this through. Fine, whatever. Effin and I will take her to the zoo or something. Oh yeah, Effin, the wet lettuce. Effin is 10 times the man you will ever be, Judd, and if Billy starts to see him as more of a father than you'll only have yourself to blame. Brooke's words felt like a dagger going straight into Judd's heart. Okay, Brooke, I don't want to go into all of this again. I hope Billy enjoys the zoo. I'm really sorry I can't see her this weekend. Please give her a big kiss for me. Brooke sighed. Okay, I will do, but don't let this become a habit, Judd. I won't. You know that Billy's the most important thing in my life. Then prove it once in a while. Anyway, we'll see you next time then. Thanks, Brooke. I appreciate your understanding. Bye then. Bye. The phone went dead, with Brooke not hesitating to hang up. Since separating from Judd, following his one too many love affairs with other women, Brooke had let her guard down with him on just the one occasion. The thing was, that one and only time had been enough for her to fall pregnant. A couple of bottles of Malbec entwined with flirty conversation of the good old times led from one thing to another. She would always fancy him, that was a given, but she didn't want to be with him. Although Judd had been over the moon with the pregnancy and initially viewed it as a perfect reason for the two of them to get back together, Brooke had made it clear that that couldn't happen. She still loved him, probably always would do, but she always hated him for what he had done. She just couldn't see herself ever trusting him again. Brooke knew of at least 2 mistresses that had caught Judd's eye, and the type of woman that he had chosen to cheat on her with did little to help his cause. The first woman was one of Birmingham's most notorious gangsters, Gia Talia, and the second was an unhinged and dangerous narcissistic criminal named Avina Marino. The fact that he could be attracted to such treacherous and unscrupulous women whilst he was with someone as loyal and caring as her was just too much for Brooke to take. Nevertheless, she was more than happy that Judd remained a major part of their daughter's life. She insisted on it, in fact. They had settled on calling her Billy as a tribute to their dearly departed friend William. William had been shot and killed on the bank of a Birmingham city centre canal. In the same attack, Crystal, William's wife, had also been killed, and Brooke had been seriously injured, resulting in her resting in a coma for many months. Judd had also been shot but managed to escape injury, which gave him the time and opportunity to cheat on his wife with Verena Marino, as Brooke lay sleeping in intensive care. Judd knew it had been despicable behaviour on his part, and he hated himself for it. Yet he still did it. After forgiving him once for his fling with Gia, Brooke wasn't prepared to forgive him again for his involvement with Vina, especially in such abysmal circumstances. Judd's hope of a reconciliation was firmly dashed when in waltzed Brooke's knight in shining armour and prize sap, as Judd referred to think of him, Effin Caruthers. Effin met Brooke when she was about 6 months pregnant. He soon expressed his undying love for her and offered to take on Billy as his own and provide both Brooke and her daughter with the family stability that was required. And to be fair to the prize sap, which actually didn't help Judd at all. Over 2 years later, he was still delivering on his promise. Judd felt the smug prick was simply too good to be true, and one day he would discover a significant chink in Effen's shining armour. But until that moment could be revealed, if it ever could be, Judd had to suck it up and contend with being way behind Effen in Brooks' eyes. Judd struggled with the situation on a daily basis. Effen was a used car salesman, for Christ's sake, and who trusts a used car salesman? No wonder he was able to charm the knickers off Brooke. He'd crafted an entire career on making people hear what they wanted to hear. To be fair again though, Effen was a bit more than the average car salesman. He was actually the managing director of a famous national car depot project, the sort that provides excellent customer service and extremely reliable used cars that are always less than 2 years in age. He was also 8 years younger than Judd. Judd hated him. Judd found himself suddenly needing a friendly voice, then it became obvious whom he could call next. If he left out the minor detail that he was standing up his only daughter for the forthcoming weekend, this person would be delighted that he was forming one half of pop duo Wham and making an appearance at the festival. For Tilda Chamberlain, sister of his late friend William Chamberlain, was one of the biggest Wham and George Michael fans on the planet, and she just happened to live in Liverpool. After a few rings, the phone was answered. "Hi Tilda, it's Judd." "Oh hi Judd, how nice to hear from you, how's things?" "Pretty good thanks, you're never going to believe me Tilda, but guess who I'm going to be this weekend?" "Judd Stone, I presume," replied Tilda, a little confused. "Do you remember that television show where every day people would transform into pop stars and say the immortal words, 'Tonight, Matthew, I'm going to be'?" "Yes." "Well, tonight, or rather this weekend, Tilda, I'm going to be Andrew Ridgeley." Chapter 2, Going down to Liverpool. Judd was the first departing passenger in line as the train pulled into Liverpool's Lime Street station. Pressed the button to activate the opening of the doors and simultaneously initiated the accompanying sound of its pneumatic operation. Once safe to do so, he stepped onto the platform and headed towards the row of turnstiles. Choosing one, the machine swallowed his train ticket as he walked on through, and he soon began to scan the sea of bobbing heads in search of his old pal Rufus Tash. It seemed quite fitting that he eventually found his friend, standing next to the station's statue of Ken Dodd. Rufus was always capable of bringing a smile to Judd's face, even when he didn't necessarily intend to. With his lank hair, comical features and ill-fitting suits, Rufus was one of life's naturally unlikable characters. Even the majority of his leathery bullshits would fetch a smile rather than cause any level of annoyance, which was never actually his intention anyway, of course. As Rufus set about harmlessly trying to impress whoever cared to listen, the inadvertent result would often be an inward or outward giggle at his expense for daring to be so ridiculously economical with the truth. The two friends greeted one another with a hug and a slap on the back. "You're looking good, Rufus." "You too, Judd. You too, Judd. The perfect replacement for one half of Sham. George Farmer may not get his job back once Andrew Baker claps eyes on you." "Oh, he will. This is strictly a one-off favour for you, Rufus." "Fair enough. Anyway, it's just as good to see you again, buddy." "You too. Where are the other two delinquents?" "One guessed the pub, of course, and that'll be the first one heading into town once we go down the steps outside the station." "No surprise there, then. Well, lead the way, Rufus." "It'll be my pleasure, but we can't go too wild with the alcohol, Judd. As much as I know Hunter will try and influence you to drink like a fish, we need you to be compos mentis enough to pull off a half-decent impression of Andrew Ridgeley. I'd probably do a better job if I was half-cut, to be honest. I'm not quite sure what it is I've let myself in for." "You'll be fine. I need to introduce you to Andrew. You know what I mean. There won't be time for proper rehearsals, but at least he can talk you through the set list. I think you're kicking off with Wake Me Up Before You Go. Good set opener for sure. I might do better if the audience were a little sleepy rather than awake though. That would stop them seeing any of my dodgy chord changes." "I've told you there's no need to worry. You won't be plugged in. The session guitarist will cover you musically." "Couldn't the session guitarist have just been Andrew Ridgeley instead?" "That would never have worked for 3 reasons. The first being that the session guitarist is the wrong gender. She's a lady." "Oops, my bad. I really shouldn't assume such things." "The second, she needs to be independently available for all the other acts. And finally, she's a shy girl and she refuses to step anywhere near the limelight, preferring instead to blend into the background. Now quit stressing about it and let's go meet Hunter and Diego." Less than 5 minutes later, Judd and Rufus were inside the pub and snaking their way through the standing drinkers across the sticky carpet to their mates. First of all, Judd hugged Hunter. "It's been a long time, man." "Too long," replied Hunter. Hunter was as good looking as he was shallow, and his looks hadn't diminished over the years except for the appearance of the odd wrinkle around the eyes. Like Judd, he had aged well. Hunter could easily have been the replacement for Andrew Ridgeley, but Rufus didn't need to explain to Judd why he hadn't asked him instead. Hunter was notoriously unreliable. Rufus would have been taking a gamble in reaching out for his help. In fact, they were both a little surprised that he had actually managed to turn up for the reunion at all. Perhaps he had changed over the years and was a little less self-centred than he once was. Only the unfolding of the weekend ahead would self-assure. In any case, in the main, Judd still viewed Hunter as a mate who he could share a laugh and beer with. Not necessarily a good mate, but a mate nonetheless. He's glad to have connected with him once again. Next, Judd turned to Diego and just about managed to get his arms around the huge frame of his friend. Unlike Hunter, Diego had a heart of gold and was definitely someone who could be relied upon. However, for obvious reasons of physical nature, he wouldn't have made a good Andrew Isley. Diego was the size of a bear and as strong as one too, but he was also a proverbial gentle giant. His real name was Lennox Ferdinand. Diego was just a nickname. Despite the usual origin of the name Diego, he had no Spanish blood running through his veins at all. Instead, he was a first-generation Brit who had been born to Jamaican parents. His hands were massive, like two huge shovels, and he had the impressive ability to carry 2 pints of beer in a single hand. This is how his nickname came about, as it was considered that to be able to do such a saintly thing, he must have the hands of God. When Argentinian footballer Diego Maradona had been questioned about the time he punched the ball into the net against England and got away with it to help Argentina run out 2-1 winners in the Mexico-hosted 1986 World Cup Finals, he had certainly shrugged and said it had been due to the hand of God. And so, although not entirely sharing the same definition of the phrase, the nickname stuck with Lennox. "It's good to see you, Judd." "Likewise. I got you in a lager, Judd," said Hunter. "Thanks, it's not my poison anymore to be honest, but I'll still drink it as you've made the effort. I'm more of a real ale kind of guy these days." "Really? Showing your age a bit there, Judd. You were always such a lager lad as I recall. A rock at the football match followed by a skinful of lager is how I remember you. I guess my taste buds grew up, as did I." Judd was a little curt. His days of engaging in football hooliganism were not his idea of fond reminiscing. "Anyway, let's raise a glass to us, whether it be lager or anything else," said Hunter. "Amen to that," said Judd, much more relaxed. The four men raised their glasses and brought them together, much like the musketeers would cross swords to portray their camaraderie. "To us," said Hunter. "To us," came the unified reply. "Wait, we are Liverpool and there are four of us," said Rufus. "Let's try that again. To the Fab Four! To the Fab Four!" "Reminds me of the time when I met Sir Paul McCartney," said Rufus. The outrageous comment was duly ignored, and instead, honouring the toast, Judd, Diego and Hunter all took a sip of their respective beverages. Sensing it best not to elaborate further, Rufus soon followed suit. As Diego lowered the glass from his mouth, his eyeline was in situ with the television positioned on the pub wall. A news channel was providing a live report that was unfolding in Birmingham. When not showing football or rugby on the screens, the pub always ensured that subtitles were activated to address the inevitable noise that the pub generated through its customers. "Hey Judd, isn't that your place in the background?" Judd peered up the screen. "Looks like it. Yes, that's the rotunda all right. I thought they'd still be reporting on that horrendous earthquake that's happened." "Yes, that's been a terrible business," said Rufus. "Thousands upon thousands dead. They were doing a piece on that, although it seemed to be a repeat of earlier news that I've seen, no major updates as far as I could tell, just fell in time. Then they cut away to report live from Brum instead. What can be so important?" asked Diego. "Actually, it's Birmingham Pride this weekend, so I guess they're just doing the obligatory report. Should be some nicer news on the earthquake for sure," said Judd. "Except that guy seems to have gate crash proceedings," said Rufus, referring to a creepy-looking figure who suddenly appeared to interrupt the broadcast. "Looks like he could be one of the countless Manic Street preachers that we get on the corner of New Street as it leads into the ball ring," said Judd. "I'm not referring to the Welsh band of the same name." "No, not with a I Heart Satan t-shirt he isn't," said Rufus. "Hey, I've seen this guy before," said Diego. "It keeps rocking up on socials. He gets a mixed reaction, but boy does he get a reaction. Loads of likes and comments, People seem to find him really entertaining. They video him on their mobile phones and stream his performances. Keeps spitting on about how the second coming of Christ is nigh, and how this time it's going to be a female. He says that she must be stopped at all costs so that Satan will finally take his rightful place and rule the world once and for all without opposition. Looks like he has managed to gatecrash a spot on national TV. Fair play to him, I guess. Mainstream media is one up on the socials, but he's still a nutter." "So he's more of a Manic Street Satanist," said Judd. "Or a Satanic Street preacher," said Diego. "Very good," said Judd. "I see what you did there." The two friends clinked glasses as they laughed. "Hey, you could get a tribute band called the Satanic Street Preachers to play your 80s music festival," Rufus announced Diego. "The bill's full. Anyway, I'd say Satan is already doing a pretty good job considering the wars and catastrophes currently taking place," said Rufus. "And this dude reckons the new JC will arrive in the shape of a woman, you say?" "Yep," said Diego. Then he really is nuts, said Rufus. Not necessarily so, said Hunter, who looked agitated by the whole thing. You don't know what you're talking about. It's no laughing matter. Hey, lighten up, Hunter. It's just a crazy guy, said Judd. Hunter took a drink of his lager, seemingly buying time before he answered. Yeah, I guess so. This end of day stuff always trips me out a little, that's all. Sorry for snapping, guys. Why haven't they cut him off yet, said Judd. Why are they even giving him airtime? Well, he's into entertaining, offered Diego. I bet they already know that this guy's a big hit on social media, so they're letting it run for a bit. The man at Satanic Street preacher was wearing dark glasses that completely hid his eyes, and his long hair was even darker. The four men watched as he vigorously moved his mouth slightly ahead of the subtitled words that were rapidly appearing on the screen. She's coming, I tell you. She's coming, but she will be stopped. She's a charlatan, sent from heaven, but she can't rule this world like the foolish believers think she can. Instead, the one true master will make his permanent and rightful seat to control this world. He has already begun his undisputed reign by creating chaos, sending earthquakes and starting wars, things that you report on day in and day out on your TV channel. You call such things acts of God? How ridiculous. You are obviously acts of the devil himself. Your God is scared, forced to send his daughter in his form to try and halt the master, but Satan is too powerful and cannot be defeated. Ask yourself this question. Why would your God allow such things to happen? He is losing control. See, it makes a fair point, said Rufus. Yeah, there's a lot of shit going on in this world, isn't there, when you think about it, offered Diego. Shh, I want to listen, snapped Hunter, which gave the impression that his apology moments earlier had been completely hollow. The animated face on the screen continued. The song you sing, Jerusalem, you think it tells of the time of Jesus, missing years when he walked on this green and pleasant land of England. Well, it is also a prophecy that the second coming will happen in England when she tries to control the world. That prophecy of the song will not come true, for we, the disciples of Satan, will ensure that all girls born at the time of the second coming will be stopped, slaughtered and slain, slaughtered and slain, slaughtered and slain. The satanic preacher shifted up yet another gear of ferocity, which hadn't seemed possible, as he spat out those final chilling words over and over. The television broadcast was instantly pulled, probably not in good enough time in all honesty, but once the rant had been considered a step too far for the live broadcast, the screen cut to the newsreader back in the studio, who began to apologise profusely. What the news channel producers couldn't do was stop the performance unfolding back on the streets of Birmingham. The perceived Satanists continued to rant and rave, whilst a large gaggle of mobile phones captured his every word, highlighting whatever broadcasting control mainstream media thought it may have. In this day and age, it needed to give way to the power of social media and the inevitable instant sharing of uncensored videos, not to mention those witnessing it firsthand in all its 4D glory. One such person videoing the scene on her phone was a local girl who liked to follow the fashion of gothic horror, a style of dress more commonly earning her than that label of being a goth. Cadence was fascinated by the imagery of Victorian horror and took an avid interest in all things paranormal. However, despite a curiosity in the more unorthodox things in life, she was actually a gentle soul who in reality could never hurt a fly. For example, she was a strict vegan purely on the grounds of her stance on animal rights and ethics. Most people witnessing the bizarre spectacle in front of them in Birmingham city centre found it hilariously entertaining, dismissing it as a guy who was clearly one sandwich short of a picnic. But Cadence was deeply disturbed as the repeated statements of infant girls being killed and understood that there could be some truth in the claims. Back in the Liverpool bar, three of the four friends were also laughing and shaking their heads. What a nutter, said Diego. I just need to go to the toilet, said Hunter, who, unlike his pals, was now appearing increasingly restless. Here, hold my beer, Diego. Diego looked at Hunter with a curious stare. Please, said Hunter. Sure thing. Hunter made his way towards the gents' toilets. What's up with him? He doesn't usually take life so seriously, said Judd. I know what you mean. He seemed to take that crazy guy's ramblings very literally, said Diego. They shrugged and drank their beer. Once safely locked inside the cubicle, Hunter reached for his mobile phone and made a call. It was answered almost immediately. Tell me you're in Birmingham today, asked Hunter. Of course, and yes, before you ask, I've just seen the TV report, Canister replied. Consider it done.
Mate, that's bloody... I don't know how your mind works.
Yeah, I'm wired quite differently, and the book does go off a lot further than that. Obviously, there's a little clue there as to something's happening with this second coming of Christ in the female form. And you know, that's only one element of lots of different things that happen. And it's I am wired a bit strangely.
I can't see how there would be any part part of that book that would be like, oh, this bit's a bit draggy?
I try. I mean, I think it comes naturally. I hate talking about myself in such a way, but I do tend to flow. So I'm not one of these authors who I have a framework rather than a strict plan, and so my mind and my characters will take me to places that I never thought they would at the beginning of the book. So I just let it happen. Obviously, you have to go back and check it all makes sense at the end, but I tend to just let things flow and go right with the shackles off, so to speak.
Oh, it's bloody amazing, mate. I'm looking forward to getting the time to read those. That'd be bloody amazing.
Thank you.
So I thank you. So where are they available?
Yeah, so I've got my own website, www.martintracey.co.uk. Very imaginative there, not as imaginative as my books. But Amazon is, an obvious place. You can have them on the physical books. You can have them as the e-books on the Kindle, etc. Also, I do a lot of public appearances at multi-author events. So if you come along to any of them, they're usually on my socials. You'll understand them on Facebook. I'll put them on website, newsletters, etc. You'll see where I'm popping up in and around the UK. So you can come and get a signed copy of me, should that wish you. But again, through my website, if anyone wants a signed copy, they can just message me through the website. Otherwise, Amazon, I guess, is the best place.
Yeah, amazing. People at home, you've met him. How can you not be enthralled by that read? Oh my gosh, I almost wish I had more time so I could get that book and start it today to find out what's going on. You've heard from the author himself where you can get it from, but please go and visit his personal website first. Check him out on all of his social media platforms. And if you have any questions for Martin, please put them in the comments section of this video, and then Martin and I will get together again and answer your questions personally. How wonderful will that be? Thank you so much for joining, Martin. Thank you so much for your time and for your talent as well, mate. That's super cool. And we will be in touch for another book read of another book.
Fantastic, I love it, and thank you everyone for listening, and thanks for having me, Jaden. Really enjoyed it.
Pleasure, mate. It's not the last time. That's a definite. You take care, my friend. I'll see you later.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye now. Bye bye.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. Oh my goodness. I mean, whoever you are, wherever you are in the world, that's going to be a bloody good read. But if you're a Brit, that's going to be a pretty exceptional read. Not only is there kind of legendary stuff about the Great British Isles, but also the mentions of all the bands and stuff. It's kind of takes me back. Absolutely amazing. Go and check him out on his social media. Go and check him out on his .co.uk site. And if you have any questions for Martin, please make sure you write them in the comments section below. And then Martin and I will get back together again and answer your questions personally. How amazing would that be? Thank you so much for joining me. Please like, please share, please comment, please subscribe, and I will see you on episode 9 of Book Read. Take care. Bye bye.